It's May 30th here in Seoul. I'm Choi Min-jung filling in for Kim Da-mi. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with a fresh round of missile provocations from North Korea. North Korea fired multiple short-range ballistic missiles into the East Sea Thursday morning. The latest provocation was widely anticipated after its failed attempt at launching a reconnaissance satellite earlier this week. The debate over South Korea's nuclear options is resurfacing in the U.S. as a senior senator proposed the idea of redeploying U.S. tactical nuclear arms to South Korea to beef up deterrence against the North. The 22nd National Assembly kicks off today with 300 lawmakers beginning their four-year terms. The first plenary session is scheduled for June 5th. North Korea fired multiple ballistic missiles on Thursday morning, with the latest provocation coming after the regime sent hundreds of balloons carrying excrement and trash across the border on Tuesday. Our Iuni has the latest.
North Korea launched around 10 short-range ballistic missiles on Thursday morning toward the East Sea from the western city of Sunan. Detected at around 6:14 a.m. by South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff, the missiles are estimated to have traveled around 350 kilometers. South Korea's military said it immediately captured, tracked, and monitored the missile launches and shared related information with the U.S. and Japan. The JCS strongly condemned the launch, calling it a provocation that seriously threatens peace and stability on the Korean peninsula. The launch also comes less than 2 weeks since its last ballistic missile provocation. The regime's missile provocation follows the sending of hundreds of balloons with trash and excrement attached across the border on Tuesday night. On Wednesday, Kim Yo-jong, North Korean leader's sister, called the balloons sincere gifts to South Korea. In a statement distributed through the Korean Central News Agency, Kim mocked South Korea for saying that the distribution of anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border to the north was freedom of expression. On Sunday, North Korea had warned it would retaliate against such actions by North Korean defectors and conservative activists in South Korea. Condemning North Korea for violating international law, the United Nations Command announced on Wednesday that it is conducting a formal investigation into the deployment of contaminated objects capable of causing harm. A UNC spokesperson said that they condemned any violations of international law that disrupt efforts to preserve peace on the Korean peninsula. Meanwhile, as was forecast by South Korean experts, North Korea's missile provocation followed the failed launch of a spy satellite into orbit on Monday. Iuni, Arirang News.
A U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee member on Wednesday raised the idea of redeploying U.S. tactical nuclear arms to South Korea to strengthen deterrence against North Korea's nuclear threats. The senator cited the absence of any immediate diplomatic solution to Pyongyang's threats. Lee Seung-jae has more.
Amid nuclear threats posed by North Korea, a ranking member of the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee on Wednesday raised the idea of deploying U.S. tactical nuclear weapons to South Korea to increase deterrence against the regime. Republican Senator Roger Wicker made the proposal in a report titled 21st Century Peace Through Strength, a generational investment in the U.S. military, in which he said the North continues to outpace expectations about its nuclear and missile programs with capabilities to target the U.S. mainland. He added that as there is no immediate diplomatic solution at the moment, Washington must ensure that deterrence does not erode on the Korean peninsula. According to Wicker, this means maintaining readiness with regular joint military exercises between South Korea and the U.S. and a persistent U.S. military presence on the Korean peninsula, but also potentially nuclear sharing agreements and the redeployment of U.S. tactical nuclear weapons on the Korean peninsula. The Republican senator also added that the security challenge in the Indo-Pacific region has become more complicated due to Pyongyang's growing ties with Beijing and Moscow. He said that international sanctions had once crippled the North Korean economy, but are now ineffective as Russia and China use their veto powers as permanent members of the UN Security Council to help the North evade more sanctions. More importantly, North Korea's strategic alignment with its traditional allies now provides a steady source of revenue, as Wicker called North Korea, a source of global instability well beyond the Korean peninsula. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The leaders of South Korea and the United Arab Emirates signed dozens of deals during a summit in Seoul on Wednesday to boost cooperation in key strategic areas from energy to AI. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
South Korea and the United Arab Emirates have inked a bilateral free trade agreement and agreed to bolster cooperation on investment, energy, nuclear power and defence, while jointly advancing artificial intelligence across all areas. This came at a bilateral summit in Seoul on Wednesday between President Yoon Suk-yeol and UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Just 1 year and 4 months after their previous summit in Abu Dhabi, a total of 19 bilateral deals and documents were signed to enhance their special strategic partnership. First, the two countries signed their Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, South Korea's first bilateral free trade agreement with a Middle East country, which will lower tariffs on all goods traded by more than 91% within a 10-year term. Setting out 14 areas of cooperation, including supply chains, energy, digital and biotechnology. The trade deal is expected to expand market access for South Korea's online gaming firms and medical services. As the two countries proceed with their agreement last year to cooperate on strategic investment, with the UAE president pledging $30 billion into Korean firms, the two sides inked a deal to broaden the channels for investment to involve more non-state institutions. Some $6 billion of investment opportunities in Korea are also under review. Also, to enhance energy security and transition to the post-oil era. The two sides agreed to bolster their cooperation in the traditional and clean energy sectors. South Korean firms signed a letter of intent with the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, providing the basis for them to receive orders for at least 6 LNG ships worth around $1.5 billion. The two governments, meanwhile, signed memorandums of understanding to increase joint crude oil storage and establish a support system for producing clean hydrogen. Based on the construction of the Baraka nuclear power plant, Korea's first export of a homegrown commercial nuclear plant, the two sides agreed to level up collaboration in nuclear energy. Furthermore, they will continue discussions to strengthen long-term and strategic defense and cooperation on defense technology. A South Korean presidential official said the two sides are working on increasing the UAE's defensive capabilities through various arms talks. Furthermore, the two countries will jointly foster innovation in artificial intelligence through corporate research and talent exchanges.
Based on our special strategic partnership forged in 2018, the two countries over the past year have focused on 4 main areas of cooperation. Through this state visit, the scope has been expanded to cooperation on cutting-edge technology, including artificial intelligence.
Based on their evolving bilateral relations, the two sides will jointly expand into third countries, including African nations, in the fields of energy infrastructure and nuclear power, as well as strengthen cooperation on climate action on a multilateral level. With the UAE being South Korea's only special strategic partner in the Middle East, Yoon's office said it hopes the Leaders' Summit will provide tangible outcomes that improve people's livelihoods in both South Korea and the UAE. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Now to some concerning news for South Korea with the announcement of the country's lowest ever fertility rate for the first quarter. For more on this, we have Professor Ho Jun-young joining us. Welcome.
Hello, good morning.
Professor, the fertility rate for South Korea was 0.76 in the first quarter of this year. How grim is the current situation and where do we stand compared to other OECD countries?
Yeah, this year the decline in the birth rate has continued, causing the total fertility rate for the first quarter to fall to 0.76, the 0.7 range for the first time ever. And the number of births has not kept up with the number of deaths, resulting in 53 consecutive months of natural population decline. So if the current trend continues for the remainder of this year, the annual total fertility rate may fall even lower than initially expected, which is 0.68. So Korea is the only country among OECD member countries with a total fertility rate below 1, indicating that South Korea's low birth rate issue is particularly severe on a global scale.
Right, and what are the primary factors causing the rate to drop so low? There seems to be a particularly large drop for women in their 30s.
Yeah, so one of the reasons is the trend of increasing singleness in Korea. But however, the trend is a global phenomenon and not limited for Korea only. So the Korean government has implemented various policies such as cash support, parental leave, and childcare support to overcome the low birth rate in married families. But these measures have shown little effect. So this deepening trend of low birth rate illustrates how difficult it is to have and raise children in Korea. So it is particularly attributed to the reality in Korea where it is challenging for women to balance work and family, especially given the recent increase in women's participation in economic activities.
Right, and the number of births tend to be a little higher at the beginning of the year, with the figure usually declining toward the end of the year. So does this mean we should be bracing for an all-time low fertility rate for 2024, perhaps even under 0.7?
Yeah, I mean, it is likely that the total fertility rate for the remaining period of this year will further decline. For example, last year's annual total fertility rate was 0.72, with quarterly rates of 0.82 in the first quarter, 0.71 in both and the second and third quarter, and 0.65 in the fourth quarter. However, the Korean government is focusing on the possibility of a rebound in the number of births in the second half of this year due to the increase in marriage since August 2022. On average, the periods between marriage and the birth of the first child is taking 2.53 years. So if the current trend continues and the annual total fertility rate falls to the level of the first quarter, it may be lower than the median projection of 0.68. However, the number of births in the second half of the year could also exceed the median projection. At present, it is very difficult to make accurate predictions.
Right, and as you mentioned before, with the number of deaths exceeding the number of births, the country's continued population decline is bound to cause negative effects on the overall economy. What should we be most worried about?
Yeah, the thing is like the lack of labor population, so the lack of workers. So in the future, maybe like it will have a negative impact on the potential growth rate of Korea. At the same time, because the number of young population is keep shrinking, so maybe we may have to be worrying about the kind of pension problem, which is expected to be depleted in early 2050s.
Right. So what should and could be done to resolve this population crisis? Are there any countries South Korea can benchmark?
I think the focus should be on creating environment that allows for child caring. Experts were asked to evaluate the necessity of major low birth rate policies on a scale of 0 to 10 recently. And the high score was given to the parental leave system, which is 9.3. This was followed by flexible working hours, 9.1, childcare support, 8.7, and reduced working hours during the childcare period, which is like 8.6. On the other hand, the cash support, one of the universal support policies so far, received the lowest score of 6.5. So we should be like focusing on this kind of result.
Right, Professor. Thank you so much for your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The four-year 22nd National Assembly kicked off Thursday with the first plenary session to be held on June 5th. 300 lawmakers will begin their four-year term under a large pan-opposition party holding 192 seats, and the ruling People Power Party and its satellite party holding 108 seats. A vote on the National Assembly Speaker will take place in the first session, with the main opposition Democratic Party's Woo Won-sik set to be elected. A formal opening ceremony will be held after all standing committee chairs have been confirmed. It's been well over 3 months since junior doctors walked out of their workplaces to protest the government's plan to expand the number of future doctors. With growing patient concerns, the administration is once again urging them to return to work, saying those who do so will face fewer penalties. Park Ko-nu has more.
On the 100th day since junior doctors left their workplaces in mosques, the government reiterated its calls for them to return, noting some have already done so. At a briefing following a meeting of the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasure headquarters on Wednesday, Second Vice Minister for Health and Welfare, Bang Min-soo, also said doctors who return now will face fewer penalties.
Don't hesitate and return to your hospitals for your patients, your fellow medical staff, and also your future. The government will do its best to keep penalties on those who return at a minimum. There will be firm differences between those who return and those who do not.
Nearly 700 trainee doctors working at 100 major training hospitals were reported to be at their workplaces as of Tuesday, up by 122 compared to the month before. When looking at all 211 training hospitals nationwide, around 7% of the total number of trainee doctors were working. During the briefing, Vice Minister Park also thanked medical staff for carrying on with their duties, saying they helped prevent a medical disruption from occurring. The same day, however, an official from the Korean Society of Emergency Medicine shared the difficulties medical staff faced in running emergency rooms for 24 hours a day without the junior doctors. The official said the number of doctors available for work had shrunk by 1/3 recently, as those doctors also took care of ward shift duties, where it used to be a rotation of 2 to 3 people in a 24-hour period. Accordingly, the official said medical staff have been barely operating emergency rooms, adding that the KSEM cannot guarantee how long this can continue due to the heavy workload. Also on Wednesday, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo said a cabinet meeting the day before signed off an additional $56 million to be given to hospitals to bolster their emergency medical systems. That's on top of the $94 million already given to support recruitment, salaries, and running costs. The additional amount will be used to support extra pay and educational fees for nurses who have been a big help filling in for the doctors under the supervision of consultants. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kim Seong, and now we turn to stories from around the world. After more than 5 weeks of testimonies and reviews of evidence, a New York justice instructed a panel of 12 jurors to begin deliberations on Wednesday for the former U.S. President Donald Trump's criminal hush money trial. Following Tuesday's presentation of closing arguments to jurors, Justice Juan Merchan delivered over an hour of deliberation instructions to jurors, explaining each of the charges and the key details of the alleged crime. He also stressed that the jurors must agree on guilt beyond a reasonable doubt if Trump is to be prosecuted on any of the 34 counts of falsifying business records in hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels. The panel of 12 New Yorkers will soon make the historic decision of whether Trump is found guilty or not guilty of felony charges. All 12 members of the jury must agree for a verdict to be reached. If the jurors cannot reach a unanimous agreement, a hung jury may lead to a mistrial. U.S. oil giant ConocoPhillips has agreed to buy Marathon Oil in a $22.5 billion deal, an acquisition that adds over 2 billion barrels of reserves to its portfolio. Houston-based ConocoPhillips made an all-stock offer equating to over $30 per Marathon share, paying a premium of almost 15% on the stock's closing price on Tuesday. Marathon Oil, which operates in North Dakota and Texas, has been a prime target for U.S. oil companies looking to increase their inventory. The deal on Wednesday is the latest in a wave of consolidation in the U.S. oil and gas industry, such as ExxonMobil's acquisition of Pioneer Natural Resources, announced in October, and Chevron's $53 billion merger with Hess, which was approved by shareholders on Tuesday. According to ConocoPhillips, the acquisition of Marathon Oil is expected to save some $500 million in costs within the first full year. India's capital territory of Delhi recorded an all-time high temperature of 52.3 degrees Celsius on Wednesday, amid extreme heat that gripped the north and west parts of India. The temperature in Mangeshpur, in northwest Delhi, saw the hottest. Streets there were seen deserted and shops shut as people hid from the heat. The Delhi area has seen temperature of over 45 degrees Celsius before, but never as high as 52.3 degrees. But India's weather office said that Mungeshpur's temperature was an outlier even in Delhi, and it is examining the temperature sensor data to see what caused the anomaly. A volcano in southwestern Iceland erupted on Wednesday, spewing lava and smoke for the 5th time since December. The eruption began in the early afternoon following a series of earthquakes to the north of the coastal town of Grindavik. The town of 3,800 people had been largely evacuated in December. The Icelandic Meteorological Office said that the eruption shot lava as high as 50 meters into the sky from a fissure 3.5 kilometers in length. 2 out of the 3 roads leading into Grindavik were cut off by lava, but barriers built around the town to manage to prevent lava from reaching the 3rd road. Local police said evacuation orders were given out early in the day for anyone remaining in Grindavik.
Good morning. What a strong sunshine we had yesterday. It was too bright to walk outside without any sun gear on. Well, after the abundant sunshine we had for the last couple of days, we are getting a break from the sun in most parts of Korea. And afternoon highs will be slightly lower than yesterday. Jeju and southeast regions will see very high UV rays though. However, the rest of the country will have relatively lower UV rays, but still we need to wear a good amount of sunblock. Morning temperatures are slightly higher than the same time yesterday, then highs will be similar to a tad lower, topping out at 26 degrees Celsius here in the capital and Daejeon. Gyeongju will see a high of 29 degrees. Air quality will be normal to good nationwide all day today. Sunshine returns tomorrow morning, but will rain on Jeju. Then Gangwon-do looks like being rainy on Sunday. Meanwhile, temperatures will hover right around the season norms for the next 5 days. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.